So we can move to like this last section with the Airbnb. So the main thing, for me, like before I start anything, is I just want to make sure I know like how the tables are connected. All right. So normally, like when you're working with this stuff, there's just like one or two tables that you have to pay attention to. And those are generally the tables that have the foreign keys or that have the most number of foreign keys. So for example, here, the one that I'm mainly paying attention to is the listings table, right? Because the listings table connects to a host and to a location. And I'm guessing a location connects to like a neighborhood. So let me show you. Right, if you were going to draw this out, maybe you would do something like this. Like a listing has one host, and a listing probably has one location. Yeah. And then like a location has one neighborhood. You guys can use a tool called sometimes you want to draw like a little diagram for this, and there is software that will do this for you. That will like kind of look at your database and actually construct the diagrams for you. But this tool, if I can get to it, draw.io. That's fine. Is pretty good. So you can see like if we just have like listings here, and then maybe I'd have the foreign key. Like this has the host ID and the location ID. And then I'll maybe put like the hosts here. So like I just like having a diagram when I'm working with something that has like more than just like two tables probably. So it's like a listing belongs to a host, and then you can maybe put the arrow. Let's see if I can do it. Here's the arrow. All right, so a listing belongs to a host. So generally the way you do this is the arrow kind of indicates like has many. So you read it like this. A listing has one host, and then a host, if you see the arrow, there's like three, if you imagine like three kind of points for an arrow, like a host has many listings. And then a listing, we say, has one neighborhood. And it'll be the same thing. A neighborhood has many listings, right? So again, you kind of read the arrow, neighborhood to listings. You see the arrow going this way. That means a neighborhood has many listings. You can just write it out. I don't know if I like that. But anyway, neighborhood has many listings. A host also has many listings, right? Which makes sense logically. It also makes sense if you look at the foreign keys. The way that you can do this, like the foreign keys kind of tell you right away the relationships, because if you have a foreign key here, you're saying there's only one of it, right? If I have a for each listing, I have a host ID, you're just going to put one value here, right? Sometimes I know that maybe this feels like I'm belaboring the point, but let's just write out maybe some values. And this is also helpful sometimes. So if you have like a listing, let's say this is my listings table, right? And maybe that has like the name, right? Like beautiful apartment. And then we have the host ID and the listing ID, right? The host ID is like 1, not the listing ID. We should have the location ID. The location ID maybe is like 5, right? And then we know there's like a host table that has like an ID and a name. And there's a locations table, and it has an ID and maybe like a longitude and latitude, right? And all right, so this is our listings. Okay. And let's just put actually a couple values. So this will be like 1 here. This is Bob. And this is, let's say there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And then I'll just put like a value here, 88, 93. All right. So, is that what I had? Hosts. This should be location. So you can kind of see it. You can really see it with hosts, right? Like if you want to find all the listings of a host, right? Then that, let's say of this particular host, it would be something like select all from listings where select all from listings. You could join if you want to. Join hosts on listings.host.id equals hosts.id where the ID hosts.id equals 1. So that will give me all of Bob's listings, right? Give me all the listings, join the hosts. We actually don't even really need to. On these two keys, listings.hostid equals host.id, where the host's ID equals 1. Probably should be this. It should be where host ID underscore, where this equals 1. And how many records will that give you back? Well, 1 for each listing, right? So there can be many returned values. Right? 1 for each listing with a host ID. So if I have like another 1 here, right, this will give me back 2 different listings. So we can see that we have like a host has many listings. If, however, you say, okay, for this particular listing, show me the host, right? Once you see the foreign key here, you can tell, well, how many hosts are for this particular listing? Just 1, this guy. How many hosts are for this listing? Just 1. So in other words, each listing only has 1 host. Meanwhile, a host has many listings. And you can tell that right away just by knowing if I see a foreign key here, if I see a listing has a host ID of a foreign key, I know there's only 1. It's like automatic, all right? So it's the reason why, like this is very useful to be able to like kind of just identify that. All right, so we see listings, we see the foreign key, host ID. This tells me a listing has just 1 host, right? Which also makes sense to me. And a listing just has 1 location. That also, like, it seems pretty intuitive. Here, like, intuitively, a location probably only has 1 listing, if like it's a unique longitude and latitude. But, maybe, I don't know. Probably not, actually, because it could be the same apartment listed many times, right? Like different availabilities. So here also, like a location has many listings, I guess. All right, so this is how we would diagram this, and then you would and you can see this is like the main table we'll pay attention to. And then from there, we just have to add in, what is it, just neighborhood, right? My guess is a neighborhood, locations probably has a foreign key of neighborhood ID, right? And I just know that by thinking of the domain, that a location has 1 neighborhood, right? And a neighborhood has many locations. So if this makes sense, it means that I must have the neighborhood ID located here, right? And it's going to be the same thing. Neighborhood has many locations. So we need to flip this. Can I flip it? Yes, you can. All right. So now you kind of have this drawn out. In my head, like I said, this is what I'm mainly paying attention to, is the listings table. Like this is combining 2 tables. This is not like, and then the only other table linking something is this locations table. All right. Cool. So now let's do some queries. So it says this is going to require like a few different tables. What is the average occupancy of each neighborhood? Interesting. Wasn't expecting that. Where's occupancy? Okay, so here's occupancy. I guess what I want is the sum. I'm just surprised these numbers are so high. So let's see. Limit to the first 5 results. So if I have this column of occupancy. I want to get somehow to neighborhood. So I know that I have to go from listings, right? And join locations. And then get to neighborhood, right? Because I'm going to want to group by. I may not even need, if I need the neighborhood name, which I do, then I'll need to join neighborhood. All right, but I could even, let me show you something. I can do select all from listings. We'll join the locations table, right? Listings to the locations on, and I'll use triple quotes so I can do this in multiple lines. On. And sometimes I also will let me just break this out into a query. All right, select all from listings, join the locations on listings.locationID equals, so I'm just always checking this, equals locations.id, let's say like limit 3. And it's just like, look at this. All right, so now I should have so I have this, and now I have the neighborhood. So if you want at this point, you could really do the group by here, right? Group by the neighborhood ID. Now I won't know the name, right, associated with it, but you can see I can start to even answer the question as to what is the average occupancy grouping by the neighborhood ID. Let's see. So my only question is it the average occupancy per listing? This seems really... So let's do a group by the neighborhood ID. That's right here. And then the occupancy, I guess we'll do the average. Select all from listings. Let's do select the neighborhood ID, comma, the average of the occupancy. And let's say as the average occupancy. And then we'll order by that. We'll just press shift return for now. So we do get some really high numbers. That's interesting. Okay, so this is this number that I guess we see. So you can start to see, like, I'm able to kind of, I guess the point I'm making is that I'm able to start to answer the question even without joining all of my tables, right? And the point is, and why do I want to do that? Because these SQL queries get to be pretty long. So if I can only join 2 tables and start to know if I'm on the right track, that's a good thing. All right, so what I did so far was I started with listings, and I joined the locations. And I said, once I have locations, I have the neighborhood ID, and I can group by that, right? If I group by the neighborhood ID, I'm grouping by each neighborhood. And I'm starting to get my answer. The only thing I'm missing at this point is the neighborhood name. So to do that, I'm going to have to join the neighborhoods table. So join neighborhoods on neighborhoods.id equals locations dot neighborhood ID. So one thing to note, right, it's always this pattern. Primary key, neighborhoods dot primary key. The table name is always going to be plural with us. Maybe it's once in a while we'll have a variation, but neighborhoods.id equals, so this guy's primary key equals this thing's foreign key. right? And the foreign key is always underscore, locations.neighborhood ID, right? And now what do I need? Instead of the neighborhood ID, we need the neighborhood name, neighborhoods.name, and we'll just move that over. All right, so this is looking good. Kensington, I don't need this neighborhood ID anymore. But the other thing you'll notice is, right, like I'm okay not getting the final form, right? As long as I'm like I'm okay with selecting more, just having a way to check my results. And now I can make it look a little bit better. So I guess takeaways from this is we were able to answer the question before, or get to 90% of the answer before joining that final table, right? By just joining two tables. And then just to get the name, just to get the neighborhood name, did we need to join the neighborhoods table? All right, the other thing is, like, I pressed shift return like multiple times, right? I did it before doing the group by. So it's like first join the tables, make sure that's working, then kind of check with the group by. So here we group by the neighborhood. All right, let's just do like maybe a couple more. The name and average listing price for each neighborhood. I feel like that's basically the same. The total number of reviews for each neighborhood. These are the same, I think. We can do one more. So the total number of reviews for each neighborhood. So if I think about it, I'm guessing, my main question is, where is reviews located? I'm guessing it's on listings. Let's just try it. Select all from listings. Limit to. Just take a look. Host ID, number of reviews. So there you go. So now the total number of reviews for each neighborhood, we're gonna have to join. So I'm just thinking about this. I'm here, I wanna go to here so that I can get to here. So it's like the foreign keys are really our link to get from one table to the other. So if this guy has this location ID, that allows me to get to the locations table. And then this locations table has the neighborhood ID, that allows me to get to the neighborhoods table. And that's what I need if I want the number of reviews, which exists on this table, and I need to get to the neighborhood. So select all from listings, join the locations table on listings.location ID, right? Because it's the foreign key here equals locations.id. And now I would just press shift return to make sure this thing joined properly. So here's my location ID, here's my locations.id, and you can see they're both 0. So that's joining that. And now the next thing I want to do actually I don't even need to. I have the neighborhood ID here, right? So we can use that same technique as the total number of reviews for each neighborhood. So I can group by the neighborhood ID. I'll use the table prefix of the locations.neighborhood ID, and then I just want to get the sum of the number of reviews. Let's just take again a look at what listings looks like. Number of reviews looks like that. The sum. So now if you think about it, what are we doing? We have this same table, right? We're working with this table, and now we're just going to group these, put these into groups based on the neighborhood ID, and then add up those groups. So every time we see 0, right, we add it up with all the other neighborhoods that have 0. We add up the number of reviews. So sum the number of reviews, group by the neighborhood ID. And I'm just looking to see, are these ordered? It doesn't look like they are, which is probably a mistake. Okay. So you can see, like, again, you can already see that we're getting the right answer, even before joining that third table. I'll just put an alias here as number of reviews. So that's looking good. And now what I want to do, I need to go from locations. Right, I have the from locations, because I already have this table loaded up, the listings table loaded up. I need to get the neighborhood loaded up. Join neighborhoods on locations dot neighborhood ID equals neighborhoods dot ID. Yeah, and now that I've joined the table, I should probably put the neighborhood name. Neighborhoods dot name. Okay, so this is looking all right. So again, like the procedure for me is join the tables. You don't have to join all of them. Just join enough so that you can do a group by. Then, do the group by do it on the foreign key or on an ID. Don't do it on the name, right? Because names can be, you can have multiple people, multiple neighborhoods with the same name, right? In which case, if you have two neighborhoods, both named whatever, Kensington, then you're going to be counting it twice, right? Even if one's in one location, one's in the other location. So you want to, this really comes common with like customers, right? You have two customers have the same name. You want to see who is the highest spending customer. Well, if we have two Bob Smiths, right, we're going to be counting two different people as one, right? Which isn't a good idea. So you want to do it based on the ID. All right, questions on this lab? All right. I posted the solution here as well for you guys to look at. All right, let's move on to has many through then. And here's the idea. Okay, let's say we run, a hospital or a doctor's office. We have, these are our doctors, Greg House and Lisa Cuddy. And then these are the patients. All right. Now, lots of times there may be some sort of transaction that like links two different entities, right? So this would be our doctor's table. These are our patients' table. So let's say now we want to think about, okay, well, a doctor, who is the doctor of this patient? So you might have like a doctor ID column here and say, okay, well, Jerry Seinfeld has this doctor, and George also has House, and then Cosmo, he has Cuddy. All right, but the issue is if Jerry goes now to a separate doctor, right? If he goes to Cuddy, well, now we have to add like another doctor ID column here. It's kind of weird, especially you could see a third doctor, Doogie Howser, right? And now we have to, now he sees all three doctors. We have to add a column every time he sees another doctor. So that's not a great idea. You could think about trying to do it the other way. You have a patient ID over here. But obviously, we can already probably guess this is going to lead to problems because every time Greg House gets another patient, we have to add another column. So here you can see the issue we're having is really that whereas before we had, something like a neighborhood has many locations and a location belongs to a neighborhood, right? And remember, whenever we had the location like has one or belongs to one neighborhood, this is where the foreign key lived, on the belongs to, right? We had the location had a neighborhood ID. Here we have a problem because both of these, we have that a doctor has many patients, and we have a patient has many doctors. So this is a many-to-many relationship. And with a many-to-many relationship, you can't put the foreign key on either table. So instead you have a third join table. So in this case, you would have the patient ID and the doctor ID. And if you want to say that there's a link between like Greg House and Jerry Seinfeld, you would do this. And if you want to say there's a link between Cuddy and Jerry Seinfeld, you would do this. Oh, let's do doctor ID as 1. Sorry about that. Just to make it a little easier. So the we'll put Cuddy is 2, and the patient ID is 1. Let's just do one more, we have doctor ID is 2, and then let's say Kramer is 3. Okay, so let's just tell a story with this. So this is saying doctor ID, this is Greg House, has for patient Jerry Seinfeld. And this is saying Cuddy has for patient Jerry Seinfeld, right? So Jerry has 2 different doctors, that makes sense. And then we have doctor ID, Cuddy, also has for a patient Kramer. So, right, Cuddy has 2 different patients, and Jerry has 2 different doctors, right? All seems pretty reasonable. One thing, so this, you can have this just as a table, and this works fine. The only other thing I'd emphasize is that generally, this is what makes someone a patient, like of a doctor, or what makes, like what is the entity that links these two? Generally, it's like when they meet, right? In other words, it's like an appointment. So maybe you just have like the appointments table, and you may have like the time, right, or the date of the meeting. You don't have to, like, there are other ways to structure it, but, right, like something like this for now works fine. So we can say, oh yeah, they met, we'll just do like a day of the week. They met on Wednesday, these guys. Then Jerry went to see the other guy on Friday. And this is Cuddy saw 2 people, both Jerry and Cosmo, on Friday. Okay? So you can see this is a many-to-many relationship. If I ask you the question, who are all the patients of Greg House? You're going to have to do something like this. First, load up the doctors table. So I'm just going to put select all from doctors. Then you're going to need to load up this table. So say join appointments. And how are you going to connect them? Well, it's going to be this ID is going to link with this ID. Right? So join appointments on doctors.id equals appointments.doctor ID. So that's just going to give me these 2 tables. So if I want to see all the patients of House, I can get, like, this will give me, these 2 IDs, and that will be pretty good. But if I want to get the name, right? Oh, actually, just give me this one because this is all the pages. Then if I want to get the name, then I'm going to join this third table. So I'll join patients. And how do I link patients? Well, it's going to be this ID with that ID, right? So join patients on appointments.patient ID equals patients.id. Right? And then you can say like where the doctor's name equals House. Right? Or Greg House. We can see the, so first of all, does this feel okay? What you're doing is you're again and again loading tables, and you're loading them by joining them together, and then linking the foreign keys. All right. So if you want to, I put this in Khan Academy in our little console, and you can see we have this dot. This is the main table, right? The main table is the table with the foreign keys. In this case, we really only have one table with foreign keys. It's this appointments table. All right. So if I have the question, who are all the patients of Greg House? What are you doing? You're looking for the thing with a doctor ID of 1, right? So who are all the patients of Greg House? It's going to be patient ID 2. It seems like he had 2 appointments. I kind of messed up the data a little bit, but 2 with patient ID 2, and this person, number 3. All right. So let's start there. So you could say select all from appointments where the doctor ID equals 1, right? And then you can just slowly join the tables. So you can now join the patients if I want to find out who this patient name is. So say join patients on patients dot ID equals appointment dot patient ID. I probably need this to be appointments. All right, so I'm linking together. This is my appointments.patient ID with the patients.id. So this is how I'm connecting my appointments table to my patients table. Right? And again, these are where the doctor ID is 1, where this was House. And now if instead of putting in a doctor ID of 1, you want to put in, House, what will you have to do? You'll have to join in the table, right? House is on this doctors table. So you have to join doctors.id, on doctors.id equals patients.doctor ID. Did I do this wrong? Join doctors on doctors.id equals patients.doctor ID. Oh, there, where the doctor ID equals 1. So we get a bunch of 1s here. I feel like it's messing up. Oh, we can't find the column name patients.doctor ID. It should be appointments.doctor ID. Sorry again. Okay, so these are, again, now we have this table. This is my doctor's table that I just joined here. So now I have House. So now instead of putting where doctor ID equals 1, we can put where doctors.name equals Greg House. All right. So in other words, I had to join all 3 tables here. The main table I started with was the appointments table. And I was able to mainly answer the question just with that one table. When I did select all from appointments, where the doctor ID equals 1. And then I just started joining the other tables. Then I said, okay, I want to find out the names of these patients. So to go from patient ID to George Costanza, I had to join patients on the patients.id equals appointments.patient ID. And then in order to search on Greg House, instead of the ID, again, I had to join the doctors table on the doctors.id here equals the appointments.doctor ID. And then you can just select the columns you want. So select, maybe like patients.name. So these are the patients of Greg House, right? And you can always group by the name if you want to go from there. So the point is this. What I would do, you want to identify the join table, the table with the foreign keys, and try to answer as much of the question with that. This is the same strategy that we saw with Airbnb, right? Where I only loaded up 2 tables and grouped by the neighborhood ID before I even loaded up that neighborhoods table with a name. Here we have, the 2 key foreign keys on here. So it's just like, all right, instead of searching by Dr. House's name, just search by his ID first. And then you can always join the other table from there. You guys still awake? Yeah. Use this Khan Academy thing is good, right? Like, it's useful. All right. I think that you probably, let me see if the question is, can you share a link to, sure. So I can put this, I'll put the query, this is all the code. One annoying thing is, you have to write out the create table statements here, but I'll just copy and paste that into Slack. And then for the Khan Academy, I'll put that in as well. And you just have to essentially replace, let me show you. When you click on it, you'll see this. Just click, you can just, it says like the play button or whatever, but just click on it and then delete this content and put in the content I put in here if you want to play around with it. All right. So what I'll do, one thing to note is we'll start with just like a normal lab. And then there's this other lab on, I don't know if we'll get to it. We'll see if you guys get to it. If you get to it, what it asks you to do is, what you want to do is essentially copy. It asks you to do the modeling, right? Like, in other words, you want to paste this into Khan Academy, and I put in a lot of the data, but I didn't put in the foreign key, right? You can see the appointments table doesn't have the foreign keys there, but it should. So you're going to have to update the tables and insert in some data to link these properly. All right, that's this data modeling lab. Modeling has many 3 lab. So if you get to that, I don't know that we'll get to that tonight. But if you do, just note that that's how you should work with it, is by copying and pasting into Khan Academy, and then adding the proper foreign keys, and then it asks you some questions from there.